Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Broad Banter. We are coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Jahan Corbin. This is Lynn Haddad, and we are honored to be able to facilitate this conversation today with a very special guest. We are part of an organization called Breast Cancer Recovery in Action. BRA is our acronym, so you can insert your supportive pun there. We are first and foremost a community of breast cancer survivors. Lynn and I are both survivors as well, and we hope to empower women and strengthen them through three primary components of our program. We do exercise, we do education, which includes events like this one that you're listening to today, and emotional wellness, which is so impactful after someone has gone through a cancer diagnosis. So, wherever you are, as a pre-vivor or during treatment or even years after treatment, we hope to go out to the community and meet you where you are and just help empower you to live a full, healthy life after breast cancer. So we're very glad you're here today. Thank you for joining us. This conversation is called Broad Banter. It's part of a monthly offering that we do where we have guests that are experts in their field and offer relevant information to the breast cancer community. And Lynn and I are both very excited about our guest today. So I'm going to turn it over to my partner here to introduce our guest speaker.
Yes, I have the privilege of introducing Angela Grant, who is something of a unicorn in that she is an original Nashvilleian who was raised on a farm locally here. And for those of us who live in Nashville, it's very hard to find somebody who's actually started here in town. She has a bachelor's in early education or early childhood education and a master's from NYU in applied psychology. So she's very well educated in this area. One of the things we like to do is find a fun fact about all of our guests. And so I was just telling Angela before we started recording that I was looking at her LinkedIn this morning. And on it, she noted that one of the most rewarding jobs she has had was her job as an intake counselor for the Tennessee Prison for Women from the Tennessee Department of Corrections. And so I would love to hear a little bit about that, Angela.
Well, hi, thank you, ladies. First of all, I just want to say I appreciate you having me on Broad Banter. I'm so excited and honored that you would even invite me as Angela's anchor to be a part of this. I love the work that you all are doing. I think it's also not helpful for persons that have been through or are going through, but also the people that may be caregivers to them or maybe family and friends to have a part of the conversation because they also, within the work that I do, are experiencing grief as well. So, of just having to, yeah, this new transition of seeing a person be in a different place in their life, no matter the outcome. There's a lot that has to go into that and a lot of emotional um, things that can happen within you that make you feel like, I don't know what to do. And so the conversation of grief is very important for this. But in that, like Lynn said, I did used to work for the Department of Corrections. I was an intern actually as I was at NYU in New York. I came back to Nashville because NYU wanted too much money during the summer. And so I was like, I'm coming back to Nashville to get a job. And so that job landed me. My aunt worked for the Department of Corrections, and she was able to get me an internship there. And initially, I was in the office downtown, and then they talked about an opportunity to work within the women's prison for TPW, so Tennessee Prison for Women, was starting a new transition program for women to transition out of prison, like in a process, like a three-step process, if I'm remembering correctly. And so they had to go through like the intake as well as the working within the prison. And then if they met these expectations, then worked without outside the prison until it was time for their release date and see how they kind of interacted with community if they could get back out there. And so I got to be a part of that. And like Lynn said, I was an intake counselor, so I was on the kind of front end. So I got to know a lot about the women, maybe what put them in that position of being in prison, as well as just some background information that was really neat. And it was just a really rewarding job. At the
Mm.
end of it, I remember they did an awards ceremony um, in the prison, and so someone was like, there's somebody that shows up every day with a smile on their face and is very kind, and they don't treat us like animals. And I'm like, who would treat you like you're people? Like, this is crazy. Like, you made a mistake. Why would somebody treat you like animals? Crazy, And they were just going on and on and on. And then they said, Angela Grant, we want to reward you with showing up and being here for us. And I was like, what are we even talking about right now?
Oh, what a pleasant
Oh
surprise.
my gosh. It was such a surprise
Oh,
because
Yeah.
I would probably go in there maybe 3 or so times because I would work downtown and do like also work with like getting nurses to go into the prison system and just do intern work, a little grunt, like, filing copies and all that kind of stuff. But I would be like, I really want to go to the prison. Like, who says that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be with these ladies because I remember one woman was like, nobody has ever asked me how I was doing. Like, I would go around and ask, how are you doing today? How's everything going? I mean, I know you're in the situation you're in, but how's your spirit or something? And some woman just literally probably took 45 minutes to an hour and stood there and just had a whole long conversation about the fact that, wow, nobody's ever asked me that before.
oh wow.
And so even something as simple as that.
That's
That's
amazing.
amazing. I love that. I don't know you well, but we've had a couple of conversations, and the more I talk to you, the more I feel like I'm being affirmed in this impression of you that your humanity is what really makes you just a great person. Because just like that, like applied to the women that are in the prison, you're just like, but they're just people, and I'm just asking them how they're
Mhm.
doing, and that really. You touched on what we're going to talk about today, but unfortunately, you have a lot of experience in the area of grief as well. But you're also very, very qualified to talk about it and kind of and facilitate this conversation for us. So um, I think the humanity piece that you bring even to the grief conversation is what is so beautiful about the work that you're doing and the relatability. So with that, I guess we'll get
Yes.
into our
Let's
conversation today.
segue into
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
So tell us kind of more about Angela's Anchor and how and why you came to do the work that you're doing currently.
Angela's Anchor came out of my own grief. So I lost my fiance to a motorcycle accident in 2006. A week after he proposed to me. So talk about just being in the highest of life and then sinking to the lowest, literally. And I had gotten my master's degree in applied psychology a month before it happened. So from May 8th to June 8th, I was on a roller coaster of heightened emotion.
Mhm.
Like, got my master's degree May 8th, like graduated from what is it? Radio City Music Hall. How cool is that, right?
How fun.
Wow.
I know, right? And then got engaged May 30th, 31st, around the day after Memorial Day. And literally a week later, the motorcycle accident happened. And when I tell you I was done, I was angry, I was hurt, I was disappointed, I was just it was a lot for me. So I thank God that I'm still here because I was not a happy person and in a very bad space. And I didn't even want to be in love in the first place. I remember thinking I was just gonna be single and live my life and live it up. And then I met this guy and he changed that whole perspective. And I was helplessly and hopelessly in love. And losing him made me realize that it- I could love so deeply. Like,
Mhm.
for in order for me to hurt that much, for grief to find me in such a devastating low,
Mhm.
means that I loved that much.
Mhm.
Now, it took me time to get that, you know, because I was too hurt to even understand that. But as I've learned over time, since in the 19 years since he's been gone, is that grief is just love transformed, right? And so in that, I've developed Angela's Anchor to be a place where people can learn when to lift their anchor. Because I think people think grief is something to get over or move past, or it's too hard, or I don't want anybody to see me cry. And my thing is to honor all of it. Just
Right.
allow yourself to be in the space, to cry when you need to cry. Even if you, I mean, some people are like, I'm going to cry in the morning and then in the shower so nobody can see me, and then I'm going to go do my work, and then I come back home and grieve some more. Maybe that's it. But as long as you open yourself and honor it in some kind of way, I think that's important. And so Angela's anchor came out of a place of my own grief, and then realizing that other people need this help and this work and potentially this friend. So I'm kind of a friend and companion in the grief space.
Wow. Grief is love transformed. I just think that is such an amazing way to look at such loss and pain that you
It is.
feel.
That's
I mean,
beautiful.
it's just really, I say magical, and it's not magical because it was a hard thing to go through, but it's just a transformative way, I think, to look at something that almost everybody feels at some point in their life.
Mm,
That's really amazing.
mhm.
I
It's
love
beautiful.
that.
Thank you.
So, Angela, what is one of the common, or some of the common misconceptions that you hear when talking to people about grief?
Well, I mean, everybody says the age old adage of what time heals all wounds. And I believe that, sure, time can heal if within the time you're taking the steps and the actions needed to make sure that your wounds are healed, right? Like, sure, you can, get a scratch and not put a band-aid on it or peroxide and it'll heal. But is it clean, or is it going to be infected later? I mean, we take the steps to clean the wound, maybe put some Neosporin on it, put a band-aid on it, right? Until it's time to take that band-aid off, and then air can hit it again. But it's the same with an emotional wound. Do we take the time to try to clean it up a little bit and then, put a band-aid on it for a little bit? Whether that band-aid looks like laying in bed, for a couple of times, or even eating a big old thing of ice cream, whatever the band-aid looks like. Well, I'm not here to judge your band-aids. But taking the time to honor the space to reflect, cry, laugh, reminisce, all the things that you need to do before somebody says, okay, that's enough. You should
Mhm.
be over it by now.
Yeah.
It's time
Mhm,
to
Okay. Time, it's over.
yeah, and it's like a
I'm here.
deadline.
Yeah,
And the people that are more, it's the people on the outside that are more uncomfortable with the grief than sometimes the person who's actually grieving.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
I had one of my, I guess not colleagues, but she was a girl that was in school with me. I remember her saying she doesn't often hand a tissue to people right away when they're crying so that the tears can flow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes us handing the tissue is our uncomfortability with the
Right.
person as opposed to their need for the tissue.
That's right.
That's
That's a lesson that I had to learn post my breast cancer diagnosis in the emotional wellness groups that Bra does. One of the sort of group guidelines that we talk about at the beginning is letting people express their emotions, whatever that is. It could be tears, it could be anger, I mean, whatever it is, but not the other members of the group, not like reaching over to
yeah,
console them or
hugging
hugging
and
or offering Kleenex
during the session.
during the session. And it feels a little bit awkward for me as a Southern woman because I am like, well, I want to show empathy and I want to be
Yeah.
able to express my own concern. But what I realized is that it is more about making me feel
Right.
better, even though my intentions were good, that it truly is more respectful for my person in the group with me to be respecting their space and honoring that, like what you're talking about, letting them sort of experience whatever emotions they have without me trying to interject some comfort or
Right. It makes them feel like they
consoling.
have to stuff their emotions in the moment.
Right.
So then we're like, after the session's done, then you can go and
Then
comfort
you,
and hug it out. But during the course of our conversation, we don't hug, we do hand the Kleenex. But that's it. We all sit in our spot and we listen, and that's it.
and just try to let them
And
experience whatever
yeah,
it is they're
with a
feeling.
supportive look on our
Exactly.
face. Yeah, we don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
I
It's
was doing
important, I think.
exactly. No, that's very important. I was doing a grief retreat, and I remember there's a song that I hear that, like, sometimes it takes me there, and sometimes I don't internalize the words on purpose, but there are times where I do. And I was talking to the ladies at the retreat, and somebody had turned the music on just lightly.
Mm.
Hmm.
And it was the first song. And it's a song by some friends of mine who actually are local to Nashville, named Lewis York, and it's called Slow Motion. Beautiful song. When you get a chance to it, check it out on streaming platforms. Um, they don't even know I'm plugging it, but just so happens. But it's a beautiful song. And literally, every time I hear it, I think of life and death and all the in between. I think of a mother and a child. I think of being at a funeral. I think of being at a wedding. So the song plays, and I knew it. It was on my playlist, but I didn't expect to hear it at the time that I was having this conversation.
Hmm.
And I just started crying.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I just want to hug you." Because there was a few
Hmm.
friends at the retreat. She was like, "Angela, I want to hug you." And I said, don't come.
No touch.
I said, "I need you to experience something that I don't enjoy doing in front of people." I was
Hmm.
like, this is honestly, as much as it is for me, it is for you to be able to sit with this, because
Mm.
we get so uncomfortable with people's grief
Mhm.
that
Hmm.
we don't allow them to express it. We
Mhm.
stop it, we truncate it with a hug or with a handing a tissue or whatever, out of a place of goodness.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
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 It's well
And it's
intended,
not that it's
but it's
bad. Yeah, but it almost stifles it. And it
right.
makes it like, am I not allowed to feel, the things,
Yeah.
or I mean, when you hug somebody, you don't look at them anymore. If you think about it,
Yeah.
right? You feel them, but you
Mm.
don't have to see the tears fall, all the things. So I said, nope, I want you to witness this. I want you to sit with this
Mm.
and look at it happening.
Well, that's a hard thing to learn. I
It
mean,
is.
like when you're an adult, right, caring for a child, you wouldn't do that, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you go, your baby cries, you hug them, you cuddle them, and so I don't know if there's some point growing up when it's like, okay, now is the time, it's an emotional wound, I need to give you space. And you would even, as like a parent raising a child, you would need to explain to them, well, I'm not hugging you because I'm trying to let you do this. It's a tricky thing. I think
Mhm.
it's a really wonderful skill.
Agreed.
And frankly, it's something I should think about with my teenagers,
Mhm.
when they're talking about something really hard. Well, I'm sitting over here because I want to give you a chance to get out what you want to get out.
Mhm.
But it's a challenging skill, and it's a challenging thing for people probably to feel being directed towards them, right?
Right.
Like, why are you not coming over and,
Right.
grabbing me and giving me a hug? I'm telling you, I'm crying.
Yeah. But it's like the
Yes.
physical manifestation of the idea that you don't want to fix everything. Like
Right.
verbally, we often want to put words in, or at least I'm saying, I'll speak about
Yeah.
myself with my kids. Let's say they're hurting, they're working through a problem. I want to say, let me tell you how to fix this. Let me
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
verbally, at the older they get and the more they're developing in their own emotional maturity, I need to just be able to sit with them in
Yeah.
their sadness or their anxiety or whatever it is, and not try to fix everything. Well, this is sort of the physical version of that.
It
It's
is.
like, how can we sort of learn and communicate with others around us that we need to experience this, we need to feel this, and it's okay, and you don't have to comfort.
Right.
um, well, that's an interesting segue into the next. I know we talked about another common misconception on our pre-call, and that's
Mhm.
really applicable to our community, and that is that grief is only associated with death. Because in the breast cancer community, and to your point earlier about thinking about this conversation being useful for caregivers and friends and family, I will just say for me as a survivor, I mean, you get to the other side and it's like, okay, great. I lived and I'm here and I made it. But now there are other forms of grief that I've experienced through my breast cancer diagnosis. There was a lot of loss, even in just my innocence and my outlook on things. And I don't feel like there's a lot of space for that sometimes. I think in our society it feels like. So I would just love to hear more about your thoughts on as you've talked to people, and it's not, let's
Right.
say it's not death per se. I mean, you did experience a very dramatic death. But let's say it's not that, and how does that look?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the catalyst for the start of all of this,
Yeah.
the book, Angela's Anchor, and all that. But I've had job losses.
Hmm.
I've lost friendships just based on time and distance. I've
Hmm.
Hmm.
lost, I was a caregiver. and lost what I knew to be my father before he passed. I think I
Mm,
was grieving more before he passed than when he actually passed,
mhm,
because there was some relief in that, right?
Hmm.
Um, just changes, transit, moving to a new state, moving back home, moving, moving from New York back to Nashville, buying a home, having to sell that home, move back in with my mom. All of those are transitional. All of those are losses. There are micro losses.
mhm,
I'm not a mother. I've never actually been married, but I've heard that even in these highest times of happiness and joy, there's a loss of singleness, you know? There's a
Yeah.
loss of autonomy.
Yeah.
mhm, right.
Right.
You
Mhm,
Lots
know, there's a
like,
loss of space and a loss of sleep. Okay.
right.
So and
yeah.
all of these losses compound over time, and people don't realize they just kind of move through them like, oh, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm this, I'm that, afraid to call it grief when
Right.
actually that's what it is. Like if we want to go with the Kubler-Ross definition or stages of grief, if we hit those 5 stages, some people are like, oh, some of them don't make sense. Like what is bargaining? The wishing, if the ifs I could have type things, but there is all the denial and the shock, the anger, the acceptance. And grief is not linear. So sometimes you feel those things. Like I got to acceptance one time and then I realized, nope, I'm angry.
Right. Moving
Within
A lot
backwards
of
and
back and forth,
forwards.
right.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of back and forth. And so I think if we allow ourselves to kind of be honest and understand what grief is and
Mhm.
not be so afraid of it, then we can understand that we're constantly in a state of grief because we're constantly in a state of transition,
Mm,
right? Change is the only constant. And not that you have to be so down about it, but just say, hey, this is kind of bothering me. I didn't know I was going to feel this way,
mhm,
whatever that is. And there's so much more loss than there is death, right? If that makes sense.
mm,
Yeah.
Um,
for
that we
sure.
experience.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, two of you as mothers,
Right.
as wives, as breast cancer survivors have
Mhm,
Yeah.
gone through a myriad of losses,
mhm,
Yeah.
right? And whether you identified them as I'm grieving this, they were still a part of your transition. And
Yeah.
so I think we see it as transitional
mm,
causes a lot of angst or grief or anxiety.
mhm,
Um, then then we can easily latch on to the thought of what grief actually is.
mm,
Like, of course, a death, when I say grief is love transformed, that's a huge thing. But also, there are things that we loved. There are jobs that we loved. There are friendships that we loved. There are place I loved New York. And it took me a while. Like when I first got to New York, I was like, it's okay. I want the shirt that says New York is cool. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But it had to have like the sarcastic aspect to
Right.
it.
Yeah.
sure.
And then now when I go back, I'm like, I need another I love New York shirt? So it's like,
Yeah.
so even that, like having a transition away from this new city that I fell in love with, that was a little bit of grief. And I transitioned to be with this, man that I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. So I'm having like all these little micro griefs, not even realizing it.
Mm,
My grief therapist even said to me, she was like, wow, you got your master's degree, you moved from New York, stayed with your parents for a little while in Nashville, and then moved to Florida, got engaged, and then you lost your fiance. She was like, the dust didn't get to settle in any of the areas of those,
Right.
those huge life events.
right.
And
Hmm.
I was like, wow. When you think about that, like if you've been behind another car on the dirt road and they kick up the dust and it gets all on your car, that's
Mhm,
where I went when it was
mm,
like the dust didn't get to settle. Like, no, because now the dust is getting on my car. It's on my windshield. It's
yeah.
messing up my view, right? And
Mm,
so I was like, wow, no, the dust didn't get to settle. And so I don't know what emotion I'm feeling.
In our discussion groups, our emotional wellness groups, I'm kind of going off our script. We do an exercise that I think we talked to you a little bit about in our prep, where we ask our participants to list the various losses that they've experienced, and they do a line designating, they make it longer for how significant of loss it was. And
Mhm.
so I can imagine your diagram would have had like a series of very high lines at one point, and I don't know what the rest of your lines would have looked like. But we find that or I find when I'm talking to members, that when they reflect back, they kind of see patterns in how they have dealt with losses throughout life. Like some people have, leaned on their family or have, had trouble dealing with every loss that came through. So is that something that, through Angela's anchors that you work with people on, trying to change that paradigm so that they're able to, do you have like strategies that you're able to give people in trying to help them cope with future losses more effectively or work through these, I guess, the fact that life is a series of losses that we just kind of have to keep moving through. Is that something that, you feel like you can help people work through?
Well, I will say I've heard of what you're doing. I also have my certification through the grief recovery method as a grief recovery method specialist, and so
Uh-huh.
we do something called like a lost graph history, where it
Right.
is that you take a line and you draw, how much that affected you, and you can draw a little bit above the line about like the highs, those good times or whatever if
Yeah.
it's on the paper. So I do understand that concept of seeing how losses have kind of shaped your life. Um,
Yeah.
and so I wouldn't say that I have a strategy per se of how to deal with the next loss because we don't know what that's going to be. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And losses affect us differently.
Mhm.
Some
Okay.
people might lose a person, but they also might lose a pet. And the
Right.
pet might actually hurt worse than some of their family members, right?
Right.
Just depending on what the dynamics of that relationship are. And so I don't know that I can really help somebody understand how to get to or through the next loss. But what I
Mm,
Right.
can do is offer them permission to feel how they need to feel,
mm.
All right.
So good.
no
That
matter what it is. And
right.
and even though that seems kind of maybe simple, I
Right.
think some people need permission to feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like I
No.
remember the first time I cried, I mean, the first time I laughed
Uh-huh.
after my fiance died, and I felt guilty,
Mm,
Right.
and I was like, oh, nothing is funny in life.
mm,
Why would I be laughing?
mhm,
Mm-hmm.
But it was hilarious. Like when I think about it, it was hilarious. Like it was, I was with a group of women who were older than me, grew up in like the 70s more so. And we were playing that, you remember light as a feather, stiff as a board kind of thing,
mhm, mhm.
where you had to like think of something heavy or think of something light.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking about something heavy, they couldn't pick me up. And that afterwards they were like, Angela, what were you thinking of? And I was like, I was thinking I'm a brick house. And they started laughing because of the song. She's a
Song.
brick
Uh-huh.
house. And so they were like, oh my God. They were like, that's hilarious. And so I was like, I didn't even think of that. And I'm laughing and I'm like, that's not funny. And so it would have been nice to have permission to know that I could laugh in that moment.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
And
Sure.
not have to stifle it or feel like nothing is funny, everything is devastating because
Right.
this tragedy happened to me.
Right.
um
Right.
so I do offer that we laugh
I
and
love
that
that.
we cry, and hopefully we do it in the same breath.
I
I
love that.
hope that while you're crying you start laughing, or vice
Right.
versa. Look
Right.
as crazy as you want to, but
That's
just feel it.
Well, it's the full scope of human emotions, right? I
Right.
mean, we even when we are in a season of loss or grief or tragedy, we are still there's still all of us that we bring to that situation. And I love, you've used the word permission several times, and I just love the in my mind, I'm thinking of the word grace, just like even
Mhm.
these losses that say our members experience after a cancer diagnosis, even to be able to define it as grief is transformative, I think, as opposed to being like, well, I mean, I should be over this. I feel frustrated, or I'm, whatever other words are, just to be able to say, I am grieving what I thought my life was going to look like and what it actually has been, wherever that is on the range of things.
Mhm.
Um, I just think that's beautiful to be able to like offer grace to one another and to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's big. I'm surprised I haven't said it yet because I usually do say
It's
it's
huge.
about grace and compassion. It's about
Yeah.
Absolutely.
grace and
Absolutely.
compassion.
That's
That's my thing. Once I realized I had to give grace and compassion to myself,
mhm,
Right.
which I don't know why that was a hard concept for me to understand. Um,
mhm,
Many
but
people struggle with that.
as somebody that kind of is, I wouldn't even say that I'm a high achiever. Yes, I've gotten to great lengths and places, but I wasn't always just like, oh, I have to do this and get this done.
Yeah.
But somebody that is maybe a little self-critical at times, I'm like, it never dawned on me like grace and compassion are what I need to offer myself, and in order to offer that to somebody else, I have to have it for myself.
mhm,
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I know what I've been through. I can't
mhm,
imagine what anybody else has gone through. I need
mhm,
to offer them a little grace and compassion too, based on
mhm,
the fact that I know what it feels like to hurt or be anxious, or confused about things. And
Right.
so we don't ever know what anybody's going through. We offer a little kindness. So yeah.
There's your humanity again. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah. Well,
I try to be human out here.
It's hard to be a human, but I
no,
I love it when we are.
you are a very kind
Uh-huh.
human, but
That's right.
is there a point? Okay, so we're offering and encouraging our friends and family and ourselves, right, to have grace and compassion for themselves. But is there a point when you should maybe have some concerns about how you're dealing with grief or how a loved one or friend is dealing with grief? And maybe it's getting a little unhealthy or dangerous. Maybe they might need some professional help. Are there any signs that people should be aware of?
Well, I mean, if you see that, and people tell you how they're doing if you listen, right? If
Right.
and listening is not just with your ear,
Okay.
but if you watch, you can see things change about them. You can see how their environment changes, their health changes. So if you're paying attention, you can offer a hand, if that makes sense.
Right.
I'm big on, like, people will be like, "Oh, so and so just lost their person, their dog, their spouse, anything." And I'm like, "Oh, don't bring them to me yet." I was
Anytime.
like, I might not be the person they want to see because of where I am. Like, not that I'm gonna just be smiling and be like, "Oh, grief is love transformed." I I understand. I was
Yeah.
like, but they may not be ready to hear
Right.
Mhm,
What you have to say.
everything that I have to say.
mhm,
And I'm okay with that. I'm
mhm,
Hmm.
okay with being months down the line, years down the line, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Um, but I think, going back to your question, you can kind of tell when somebody needs a little extra push, you know. And like I said, people have said, "Angela, you need to talk to this person." And I'm like, "Hey, you can give them my information, but until they're ready, they're not going to do the work."
mhm,
But you feel like a person can tell the difference between how long, like say they've lost a loved one, a spouse, say they've been married a long time and they're really torn up about it. You feel like they're usually capable of knowing it's okay that life is disrupted, because I would imagine it is,
Hmm.
disrupted really significantly for some period of time, and that they can kind of feel when they should be able to move on versus, when long as it's healthy to be in this really not able to function state. I just,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. I mean, some people. I mean, it's a hard question in the fact that people are
I,
different.
yeah,
You
I'm
know,
thinking of a
people are
person
so
when I'm
different.
asking you these questions who I feel like really had a very
What's in the
prolonged, yes,
yeah.
I
state
can
of
tell
grief,
that
and
there's
it
that
really
you're speaking
wasn't
about somebody.
clear if it was healthy or not,
Mm,
and they're like,
kinda
oh,
murky. Yeah.
it just went
Mhm.
on so long that,
Was it the sadness that you were looking at that you could see, like,
well, it
constant?
was just it dominated this person's life for so long, and so we all were encouraging counseling, and they're like, well, no, it's normal, I've had such a big loss, and we just want,
Whereas, so some people don't love counseling,
yeah,
right? For whatever reason.
yeah,
Counseling has been taboo in a lot of different cultural reasons. Some people are very spiritual and don't believe that they need to go seek any kind of professional help. I do offer coaching as
Yeah.
well as events. Like I do things called Grief and Grit, where we have talked about grief and then had a boxing session. So then you can have the kind of emotional release as well as the physical release.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that to me was just, I love that that was downloaded in my spirit because then you
Yeah.
got to sweat it out, you got to laugh it out, cry it out, all the toxins, you know,
Right.
removed in one little Saturday morning.
Love it. Love it.
Good.
I've also done like something called grief bingo where we
Oh,
get together and we talk about grief in a bingo format. Um, and then somebody or everybody wins a prize at the end of it, just being a part of it.
Mm.
Uh, but it brings you into community
Mhm.
of
mm-hmm.
other people who are grieving. And
Mm.
so sometimes I had a friend who came from California, and she got to share about something that she had not really even talked about a miscarriage that had happened. And a lot of people don't see, when you don't see the physical form of a person and you
Mm-hmm.
lose it, then people don't consider that grief to be as big.
Mm.
But
Right.
to have a miscarriage is huge, and she didn't get to talk about it with a lot of the people in and around her. Um, and that was years ago,
Mm.
Yeah.
several years ago. And she came to the grief bingo we did in like February,
Yeah.
and she was like, wow, I hadn't talked about that in a long time, but
Uh-huh.
this space allowed me to do it. And people pay hundreds of dollars to speak to a therapist, and I got
Right.
to share in this space where I felt like I had opportunity to not be judged or to be heard and all of that. And
Mm.
so sometimes it takes, and that's why I do events like that,
Yeah.
because
That's really
Right.
neat. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
quick event, but and it's not therapy,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
you're in community. And I
Yes.
Right.
think community is something that's really huge when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to I'm not alone. Because
Yes.
Yeah.
grief is the loneliest place you
Absolutely.
can ever be. And I think it's important to let people know that they're not alone, even if we didn't experience the same loss.
That's right.
But
Mm-hmm.
just to know that losses touch your life and you want to talk about it.
It's easy to isolate, I think, in grief. It's easy to feel like you're alone, to tell yourself that you're alone, and then to like almost like self-fulfill that prophecy and be alone because it just feels hard to let other people in sometimes in those moments. Well, in the interest of time, I feel like we could talk to you all
I
afternoon
know.
because you're just such a wealth of information, and I just
I'm actually
love
dying to go
hearing
to grief bingo.
from you. I am too. Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned different events and we were
Mhm.
just talking about the grief and grit. I know one of the things that you have done are we looked on your website and got the schedule for an at-home day retreat that
Mhm.
folks can do with some different exercises, including mindfulness and movement and creativity and different aspects. So that kind of brings me to my next question. I wondered when not, and we're not talking about the folks that are maybe in the unhealthy place, like not functioning, whatever that looks like. But we know grief is not linear. So you can feel like you're accepting it one day, and then the next day you can be back to stage
You can
one,
be
right?
triggered.
Be triggered
Mhm.
by anything. So, what are some practical ways that you recommend people sort of when they're feeling stuck, let's say in a temporary situation, they're feeling stuck, not like chronically? What are some ways that folks can pull tools out of their tool belt and try to use in that particular moment?
This is going to sound really silly, but take a deep breath.
Okay.
All right.
No, that doesn't sound silly.
Right, because I think we don't take deep breaths. We
Yeah,
we
it's
do
possible,
shallow breathing.
I could
right?
do that.
We're shallow breathers. So honestly, there's the taking a deep breath. There's the 4-step breath where you breathe in for a count of 4,
Okay.
hold it at 4, breathe out on a count of 4, hold that at 4.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you do that just to kind of regulate, just to kind of get your heart rate back to as steady as you can. Um, that's one way.
Yeah.
Another way, if you're able to, and you have the space, you can primal scream.
Uh,
Primal screaming comes from deep down. And it doesn't, I mean, you're sure your vocal box will be, you'll feel it, but it doesn't hurt your vocal box as much as if you scream just from your throat. But
Okay.
you scream from deep down. If you can do it into a pillow, if you have, like, I have a wide open space living out here on the farm, so I can scream as much as I want to, um, then that's always good.
Do people driving by hear you primal screaming?
No, I don't know. And guess what? I don't care.
If you live in an urban area and you've got neighbors close by, you might consider going for a drive before you do this primal scream.
Right. You may want to primal scream in your car. I have primal screamed in my car. I went through a breakup and I was
It might have been 65.
Hilarious.
yeah. And I was like, I don't feel like buying paint right now. Why am I painting by myself? And so I screamed in my car after I left home.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Um, but yeah, so we've gone from breathing to screaming. I'm a big avid fan of journaling, like
Mhm.
writing that stuff out. Some people you can rage on the page, meaning everything you can think.
Pages.
Yes, everything you can, all the cuss words you want to say to these people,
Mhm.
all the feelings and thoughts and all the things that you have in this moment, you can just put it on a page. You can
Right.
decide to rip that up because ripping also allows you to kind of get that anger out. You can burn it so you can in a safe place.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. If you have a fire pit or something, or
Yeah.
and so have a water next close by if you need to, but you can, get rid of it in various ball it up, push it as hard as you can and throw it away. But those are a few ways, I
Those are
think.
good ones.
Those are great. Suggestions. Love
And
those.
sometimes you can just go out in nature and just like ground yourself, put your feet in the grass if you're near sand in a ocean.
All right.
Please do
Love
that.
the sand. I don't like to do that with the grass. So
You don't.
no, my feet get dirty.
I don't either. That's why I went
Yeah,
very.
the sand, but not the grass.
Yeah, that's why I was like, but some people love it.
I
Some people
know.
love grass and rocks.
For me, it's not I mean, I understand your point about the grounding. I get that. But for me, it's not really what's below my feet. It's just being out in the sunshine. If I
Yeah.
can go and get some sun on my face and feel the
Mhm.
fresh air, it does. If I try, it lifts my spirit if I kind of let it happen.
Mhm.
And all of those things I think make you feel alive again
Yeah.
within the loss. Like you feel like if you can feel the sun on your skin, then you know
Mhm.
that there's an aliveness to you. If you can
Vitamin D
scream,
from the sun is good for you.
if you can let something out that is yours, then I think that's a beautiful release. And of course, the journaling, you can always journal and just keep it and go back and be like, wow, I really was angry, or I was really hurting, or wow, I started crying on the page and I can see the tears on it, like whatever the case may be.
Mm.
But I think just getting it out, period,
And that's
is.
kind of healing to be able to see the progress of
It
where you've
really
been
is.
and all those things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
this has
Oh,
been so
such good
good.
information.
Tell folks how they can find you, Angela,
Yeah.
if they want to know more about the work you're doing.
I think.
On Instagram at Angela's Anchor. I actually started a new TV show on YouTube called A Show with Angela Grant. So I don't have a guest. I have a little less than 3 minute kind of blurb about what that's going to be about. Um, Lynn mentioned my LinkedIn, so we're just going to get better about posting and doing things on LinkedIn. Yeah, but it's under Angela Grant. Yeah, and then angelasanchor.com is my website. So
Yeah.
Awesome. And did you ask about an event?
Yeah. Do you have an event coming up? I felt like you mentioned something. No.
do I have an event? I have a retreat in September coming up at Queens Bluff in Clarksville.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then I'm doing some other things, but I also, like I said, I have the new TV show that I'm
Right.
working on, and so I'll have episodes dropping ever so often. I don't have my schedule, sorry.
But people
Yeah.
can, I'm sure on your website, you'll have the upcoming things listed. So
We'll have
people can
yes,
find out what's
exactly.
available. Okay.
Absolutely cool.
Well, I am so appreciative of your
This has
time
been
today.
wonderful.
It's been
Love chatting with you.
great. Yeah, you've been amazing.
Yes,
So
this
thank
has
you.
been
Yes, we appreciate your time and just all the best to you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the good work that you're doing.
Try not to melt.
I'll try not to.
Wherever
Thank you, Lynn and
very
Jahan.
hot today in Nashville.
Yeah.
So we're trying
Johan
to stay
has been
cool.
like sweating buckets.
have.
It's like 60 degrees where we are, and she's like dying. I'm like so cold. I need to go get a blanket.
I turned my air conditioner way down because I was having a hot flash this morning. Thank you for sharing that with everyone.
Like,
It's a part of life. It's a part of
I'm about to
womanhood.
turn
Look,
blue.
if you can't cut it, this sucks for you.
All right. Well, thank you, Angela. We
Bye.
appreciate
Pleasure,
you.
ladies. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, you too.